Whispers. Behind the curtain. Mia Collins adjusted the collar of Ethan's blazer, smoothing away invisible wrinkles with gentle hands that had memorized every contour of his shoulders. The early morning light filtered through the apartment windows they'd shared for almost 3 years, illuminating the dark circles under his eyes, badges of the countless nights he'd spent coding, planning, and dreaming. "You've got this," she whispered, pressing a coffee mug into his hands. "Remember what you told me when you first pitched Nexus? That it would revolutionize how small businesses connect with clients." Ethan Hayes nodded, his hazel eyes brightening momentarily before doubt clouded them again. "That was before 3 investors walked out mid-presentation last month. And that was before you rebuilt the entire interface based on their criticism," Mia countered, tucking a strand of her auburn hair behind her ear. "I've watched you transform this from an idea into something real. They'd be fools not to see it." As a freelance photographer, Mia understood the vulnerability of creative work. She had postponed her own exhibition opportunities for months, choosing instead to photograph promotional material for Ethan's startup without charging him, something her best friend Zara called relationship subsidies with increasing concern. "I don't know what I'd do without you," Ethan murmured, pressing his lips to her forehead. Their relationship had begun 3 years ago at a mutual friends gallery opening, where Ethan had been fascinated by Mia's perspective on capturing human emotion through her lens. Back then, his admiration had been palpable, his eyes following her movements across rooms as though she held some secret to life he was desperate to discover. That evening, after Ethan's pitch meeting, Mia prepared his favorite meal despite her exhaustion from a full-day commercial shoot. When he burst through the door, his expression told her everything before words could. "They want in," he breathed, lifting her off the ground in a spinning embrace that sent her laughing against his shoulder. "Archer Ventures is funding the full development cycle. We're going to build Nexus exactly how I envisioned it." That night, they celebrated with whispered dreams against bare skin, his fingers tracing promises along her spine as moonlight painted shadows across their tangled limbs. Ethan's touch was tender yet urgent, his gratitude and love expressed in the way he whispered her name like a prayer, in how carefully he studied her reactions, as though memorizing a map to treasure. Over the following months, Mia watched Ethan transform from an uncertain entrepreneur into someone increasingly assured. The apartment gradually filled with notes from meetings she wasn't part of, industry jargon she didn't understand. Their evening conversations shifted from shared dreams to monologues about venture capital and scaling strategies. "It's just the beginning phase," she told herself. Capturing fleeting moments of their changing relationship through her camera, Ethan's profile illuminated by laptop light at 3 a.m., his increasing collection of sleek business attire replacing the worn hoodies he once lived in. When Ethan mentioned the upcoming launch gala, a prestigious event where Silicon Valley's influential figures would gather, his eyes gleamed with an intensity she recognized from their early days. "I want you there with me," he said, looking up from his laptop. "None of this would have happened without you." The sincerity in his voice rekindled something that had been flickering uncertainly within her. Perhaps after the launch, after Nexus found its footing, they would rediscover the balance they'd lost along the way. "Of course I'll be there," Mia replied, her smile reflecting hope rather than the nagging concern that had been growing in the spaces between them. Spaces that seemed to widen with each success he achieved. Little did she know that the evening meant to celebrate their shared journey would instead reveal how far apart they had traveled. Glass reflections. The Archer Ventures launch party transformed the historic Westfield Hotel ballroom into a temple of modern success. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms across walls lined with digital displays showcasing Nexus in action. Mia had spent hours preparing, choosing a midnight blue dress that complemented her eyes and brought out the copper highlights in her hair. "You look incredible," Ethan whispered as they approached the entrance, his hand warm against the small of her back. For a moment, she glimpsed the man who used to gaze at her with wonder across their tiny kitchen table. Inside, the atmosphere shifted subtly. Ethan straightened his posture, his grip on her waist loosening until his fingertips barely grazed the fabric of her dress. When Gregory Archer, the venture capital firm's founder, approached with his entourage, Mia noticed Ethan step slightly forward, creating a space between them that hadn't existed moments before. "There he is, the mind behind Nexus." Gregory's voice boomed as he clasped Ethan's shoulder. "Brilliant work, truly brilliant." "Thank you, sir." "It's an honor to have Archer Ventures' support," Ethan replied, his voice carrying a polished edge Mia had rarely heard. Gregory turned his attention to Mia, eyebrows raised in question. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats before Ethan cleared his throat. "This is Mia," he said simply. "Not my partner, or the woman who believed in me from the start, or any of the other truths that defined her place in his journey." "Lovely to meet you," Gregory said with perfunctory politeness before turning back to Ethan. "Come, there are people you absolutely must meet." Ethan glanced at Mia, hesitation flickering briefly across his features before it was replaced by determination. "I'll find you later," he promised, already being swept away by the current of opportunity. The next 2 hours unfolded like a slow-motion collapse. Mia watched from various corners as Ethan charmed investors, laughed with tech journalists, and accepted congratulations. Twice she attempted to join conversations, only to find herself standing at the periphery, unacknowledged. When she was introduced to a marketing director, Ethan casually mentioned she took some photos for our early materials, reducing years of emotional and creative support to a transactional footnote. During dinner, Mia found herself seated 3 places away from Ethan, separated by industry influencers who spoke across her rather than to her. When Ethan rose to give an impromptu speech about perseverance and vision, his gaze swept the room without landing on the one person who had witnessed every iteration of his dream. "Success is about recognizing opportunities and having the courage to seize them," he concluded to enthusiastic applause. The dessert course arrived, delicate chocolate structures that reminded Mia of the simple brownies they'd shared on their first anniversary, eaten straight from the pan in their underwear while planning their future. The contrast between that intimate celebration and this polished performance made her throat tighten. When Ethan finally returned to her side near midnight, his eyes were bright with excitement rather than remorse. "These connections are incredible, Mia. Bernard from TechStream wants to feature Nexus in next month's Innovation Spotlight." His words tumbled forward, carried by adrenaline and validation. "That's wonderful," she responded, her voice sounding distant even to her own ears. "Though I've barely seen you all night." His expression shifted to something between impatience and apology. "That's how these events work. It's about networking, building relationships that matter for the business." The words, "relationships that matter," hung between them, unintentionally revealing a hierarchy she hadn't known existed. "Do I fit anywhere in that equation?" Mia asked quietly. Ethan glanced around, lowering his voice. "Come on, don't make this about us. This is professional. You understand the difference." But as she watched him check his phone for the 4th time in their brief conversation, Mia realized with crystalline clarity that she had become invisible, not just to the room, but to the man who once saw her most clearly. Shattered frames, the ride home unfolded in fragmented silence, punctuated only by Ethan's occasional comments about potential partnerships discussed at the gala. Mia gazed out the taxi window, watching the city lights blur into streaks of color, much like how the evening had dissolved the distinct boundaries of her relationship. In their apartment, Ethan loosened his tie with a satisfied sigh. "Tonight exceeded every expectation. Gregory thinks we could accelerate the timeline for the 2nd phase of funding." Mia stood in the center of their living room, suddenly aware of how the space had gradually transformed. Her photography books had migrated from the coffee table to the shelf, then to the bedroom, making room for tech magazines and investor prospectuses. The walls once adorned with her favorite prints now displayed framed articles about emerging startups. "Did you realize," she began carefully, "that you introduced me to everyone without acknowledging our relationship?" Ethan paused, his expression shifting from lingering euphoria to confused defensiveness. "That's not true. I introduced you to plenty of people. As Mia. Just Mia, not your partner of 3 years." Not the person who helped design your original logo, who stayed up with you through panic attacks before investor meetings, who believed in Nexus when it was just scribbles on our refrigerator whiteboard. He ran a hand through his hair, sighing. It was a professional event, Mia. I can't mix personal relationships with business connections. It creates complications. Complications, she repeated, the word sitting heavy on her tongue. Is that what I am to you now? You're twisting my words, he countered, irritation edging into his voice. Tonight wasn't about us. It was about Nexus. About the future. A future where I stand 3 feet behind you, unnamed and unacknowledged. The question emerged softer than she intended, more wounded than angry. Ethan's expression hardened slightly. You're making this into something it's not. These people need to see me as a focused entrepreneur, not half of a couple. That's just business reality. The silence that followed felt like glass cracking beneath pressure. Not yet broken, but irreparably damaged. Mia moved to the bookshelf where a small frame held a photograph from their first weekend together. Ethan laughing as rain soaked them both during an impromptu hike. She touched it gently, remembering how he had once told her she captured moments others wouldn't even notice. I think I need some space, she finally said. Alarm flashed across Ethan's features. Don't be dramatic. It was one night, one event. It's not about tonight, Mia replied, sudden clarity washing over her. It's about watching myself become increasingly peripheral in your narrative. I've been so focused on supporting your vision that I've lost sight of my own. The next morning, Mia packed a suitcase while Ethan slept. She left a note explaining she would stay with Zara for a while. What she didn't write was how, for the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe without measuring her worth against his achievements. Over the following weeks, temporary separation crystallized into something more definitive. Ethan's messages evolved from confused to apologetic to occasionally resentful. I don't understand why you're punishing me for success, one text read. The fact that he saw her self-preservation as punishment revealed everything she needed to know. In Zara's guest room, Mia rediscovered her photography portfolio, dust gathering on projects abandoned when Ethan's needs had become all-consuming. She opened her laptop and began sorting through thousands of images, not just promotional shots for Nexus, but moments that had called to her artistic sensibilities over the years. One series particularly struck her, candid street photographs capturing people in moments of genuine connection. The intimacy and authenticity in these images stood in stark contrast to the performative interactions she had witnessed at the gala. These are extraordinary, Zara remarked, peering over Mia's shoulder. Why haven't you ever shown them? Mia had no answer that didn't implicate her own choices in diminishing her ambitions. That night, she submitted the series to an emerging artists showcase with trembling fingers, the first professional step she had taken for herself in years. Part 4. Canvas of Revival, the Rare. River Edge Gallery smelled of fresh paint and possibility. Mia adjusted the lighting on her central photograph, a weathered street musician whose lined face reflected decades of joy and hardship in equal measure. Her exhibition, Visible Studies in Human Recognition, featured 28 images exploring the universal human desire to be truly seen. These are compelling, commented Diana Winters, the gallery owner who had taken a chance on Mia's work after seeing her submission. There's something almost confrontational in how intimate they feel. Mia smiled, recognizing the truth in the observation. Each photograph represented her reclamation of perspective, both artistic and personal. In the 3 months since leaving Ethan's apartment, she had built a life with deliberate intention. Her freelance clients now included 2 major lifestyle magazines and an advertising agency specializing in authentic brand storytelling. The exhibition opening drew an unexpected crowd. Mia circulated through the space in a simple black dress, discussing her technical choices and thematic intentions with attendees. Several visitors expressed interest in purchasing prints, while a curator from a larger downtown gallery left her card with a handwritten invitation to discuss future opportunities. Near the refreshment table, Mia overheard 2 women discussing her work. The juxtaposition is what gets me, one said. How she captures both vulnerability and strength in the same frame. The comment resonated deeply. Hadn't she been seeking that very balance in her own life? The strength to value her work without diminishing her capacity for emotional openness? As the evening wound down, Mia's phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Saw the event listing. Congratulations. The brevity spoke volumes. Through mutual friends, she had heard about Nexus's continued success, a major client acquisition, an industry award nomination. Yet standing amidst her own achievement, his acknowledgement felt like a footnote rather than validation. 2 weeks later, a feature on emerging photographers in Artscope magazine included a full-page spread of Mia's exhibition. The accompanying interview discussed her unflinching exploration of human connection in an increasingly performative society. When asked about her inspirations, Mia spoke candidly about her journey from supporting others' dreams to honoring her own vision. The article caught the attention of Lena Ortiz, creative director at Visionary Media Group, who reached out with an unexpected opportunity, documenting a year-long series on community revitalization projects across the country. The assignment would require extensive travel, but offered both creative freedom and financial security. We need someone who sees people, not just subjects, Lena explained during their meeting. Your work has that rare quality of honesty. The night before she needed to give her answer, Mia walked along the river near her new apartment, a small but sun-filled space decorated only with items that brought her joy. The water reflected city lights in shimmering, imperfect patterns, reminding her of a conversation with Ethan early in their relationship. Photography freezes a moment, he had observed while examining one of her prints, but somehow yours always feel like they're still unfolding. He had seen her talent clearly then, before her value became measured against his ambitions. The memory no longer stung as it once had. Instead, it reinforced the wisdom of her choice to step away, to reclaim the perspective that made her work distinctive. In the morning, Mia accepted Lena's offer. 2 days later, she received a small package from a courier. Inside was a handwritten note from Diana Winters informing her that all but 3 pieces from her exhibition had sold. Among the buyers was Gregory Archer, who had purchased the centerpiece photograph of the street musician for his company's collection of emerging artists. The irony wasn't lost on Mia as she packed her camera, equipment for her first assignment in Philadelphia. The man who hadn't seen her at the gala now owned a piece of work about the fundamental human need to be recognized. Full circle moment. The spring rain tapped gently against the windows of Mia's new studio loft, a converted industrial space with north-facing windows that captured perfect natural light. After a year documenting community projects across the country, she had returned to the city with a published photo book, a significant portfolio expansion, and a newfound confidence that permeated her posture and voice. Her phone chimed with a message from Lena. Nomination confirmed! Rebuilding Together is officially in the running for the Perception Award. Mia smiled, remembering the dusty construction sites, community meetings, and transformation stories she had captured. The prestigious award recognized documentary work that shifted public understanding of social issues. Even being nominated represented a professional milestone she could scarcely have imagined 18 months ago. The intercom buzzed unexpectedly. Frowning, Mia pressed the response button. Yes? Mia, it's Ethan. Could I come up? Just for a few minutes. Her heart performed a complicated maneuver, not quite the painful lurch of their early separation, but not indifference either. After a moment's hesitation, she pressed the entry button. When Ethan stepped through her door, the contrast between her memories and present reality crystallized. He looked successful in a tailored coat, but there was something tentative in his posture that she didn't recognize. Your work is everywhere, he said after an awkward greeting. The Visionary Media campaign, the exhibition reviews, that interview in Creative Quarterly. I've been following your success. Mia gestured for him to sit at her small kitchen island. Nexus seems to be thriving too. I saw the feature in Tech Innovator last month. He nodded, running his finger along the countertop edge. We closed our Series B funding. The platform has over 40,000 business users now. The statistics hung in the air. Factual but somehow hollow. That's wonderful. Ethan, you've achieved exactly what you set out to do. Have I? His gaze finally met hers fully. I've been thinking about that night, the launch gala, about what you said afterward. Mia poured 2 glasses of water, allowing herself time to consider her response. A lot has changed since then. I was at the Perception Award nomination announcement reception yesterday, Ethan continued. Not as a nominee, just as Gregory's guest. Your photograph from his collection was displayed in the entrance hall. The unexpected connection between her past and present caught Mia off guard. I didn't know. Gregory told everyone about the artist who captured the essence of recognition so perfectly. Ethan's laugh held a note of irony. He had no idea that he'd met you before or that I'd... His voice trailed off. That you'd what? Mia asked quietly. That I'd failed to see you when you were standing right beside me. The admission carried the weight of 18 months of reflection. I didn't come here to disrupt your life or ask for another chance. I just needed you to know that I understand now what I lost, not just you, but myself in the process. Outside, the rain intensified, creating a cocoon of sound around their conversation. Mia studied the man across from her, familiar yet changed. Humbled by the recognition that success measured only in professional achievement created its own kind of poverty. We were so young, she offered, not unkindly. Both trying to figure out who we were. You knew, Ethan countered. You always saw the whole picture while I was fixated on a single frame. He hesitated before adding, Your work shows it, the ability to see beyond surfaces into something true. The compliment warmed her, because it acknowledged not just her talent but her perspective, the very thing that had felt invisible during their final months. Together, I have something for you, he said, reaching into his coat to retrieve a small wrapped package. A belated recognition, I suppose. Inside was a framed photograph. Not one of hers, but one taken of her at a recent gallery event. She was caught mid-conversation, hands animated, eyes bright with passion as she explained her work to an attentive group. The photographer is a friend of Gregory's who covered the event, Ethan explained. When I saw it, I realized it captured exactly who you always were, someone whose vision matters, whose presence fills a room. Mia's throat tightened unexpectedly. The gift wasn't about their past or a bid for reconciliation. It was simply an acknowledgement of her inherent value, the recognition she had once craved from him. Thank you, she said simply. As Ethan prepared to leave, the awkwardness between them had transformed into something gentler, a mutual respect for the separate journeys that had led them both to growth. Albeit along different paths, at the door, he paused. I'm happy for you, Mia. Not just professionally, but because you look complete. She smiled, recognizing the truth in his observation. I am. After he left, Mia returned to her workspace where contact sheets from her next project lay spread across the table. The late afternoon sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light across images of people rebuilding their lives after various setbacks, each frame capturing both their struggles and their resilience. She placed the photograph Ethan had given her on a shelf beside her awards and publications, not as a monument to what was lost, but as a milestone in her journey toward becoming fully visible, first to herself and then to the world that now recognized her vision.